All right, so tonight, as advertised, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a couple of propositions that have been put forward in the state of California that directly affect our community, specifically our currently and formerly incarcerated family. Um, Both of these bills uh, have historical significance, and both of them have very specific present significance. So the two bills that we're going to be talking about tonight are Proposition 6 and Proposition 36. In brief, Proposition 6 would amend the state constitution to provide new language, and Proposition 36 creates new and greater penalties, criminal penalties, for certain low-level offenses. And so those are kind of the broad strokes of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I'd like to start with Proposition 6. Now, in the chat, if you look in there, there are some resources that I've put in. Just a few things that if people would like to, you can click on them and then download them. These are resources that you can utilize to educate yourself and those around you in your community. It's very, very important for you to understand that your vote matters and your voice matters just as much. In the state of California right now, we are in many ways losing the momentum and the progress that we made over the last decade or so in turning around the criminal and social justice sphere to a more progressive lens. A lot of the progress we've made is being attacked by those who would like to take us back to a more punitive a more punitive time, a much more harmful time. So I'm going to start tonight with Proposition 6. Proposition 6 is a ballot measure that would, if you vote yes, would amend the state constitution to prohibit slavery and involuntary servitude as punishment for a crime, and authorize the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, so CDCR, to award credits to incarcerated persons who voluntarily participate in work assignments. So what does this all mean? So currently in the federal constitution and several state constitutions, slavery and involuntary servitude are allowed as punishments for crimes. Individuals are made to work without pay in terrible conditions, regardless of whether or not they would like to, and are punished if they don't work. And those punishments vary state to state and in the federal system as well. I was in the federal system, and I can tell you that if you refused to work, you did not get paid. You did not, you had a limited amount of phone time, you had limited amount of visits, you had limited amount of commissary. It was punitive if you did not work. And it's the same thing in the state. Now, with the state, they don't have to pay you. They don't have to pay you anything. They don't have to give you anything. They can make you work. In many states, I think it's 22 states have language like this in their constitutions. I could be wrong. It's either 22 or 8. Now I can't remember. That's okay. But that allowed the state departments of correction, allow the state to hold people regardless of the level of their offense, regardless of what they've done, and make them work for the state with no pay. And there are very few restrictions on what that work can look like, how much time that work can take, so the hours an individual can be made to work, and under what conditions. So for the state of California, a yes vote would amend, the amendment would repeal language it would amend and repeal language prohibiting involuntary servitude except to punish crime, and replace it with language prohibiting slavery and involuntary servitude absolutely. So in the state of California, we know that the state of California was not a slavery state. However, it has a long history of indentured servitude in this state. both from the indigenous population being forced to work for land barons, oil barons, trapper barons, when the state wasn't even an incorporated state yet, when it was still under the Spanish, as well as historically, even up till now, we have fire crews that are making $10 a day to go fight our wildfires, incarcerated fire teams. Most of the state of California, if you do a job, you get about 74 cents to do that job. That's what you get. So Proposition 6, a yes vote, repeals that language, replaces it, abolishing any and all indentured servitude and slavery within the state for any reason. Now, that's the negative language, right? It repeals, it takes away. The positive language on this is that it would then incentivize work through credits to reduce one's sentence. It would also remove any and all punishment for an individual who refuses to work or does not take a work assignment. It's important to understand that part of taking away a person's autonomy in the state of California, in many states, is that you don't get to choose your work assignment. They assign you to a job, and that's the job you do. And if you refuse, you go to the hole, you lose privileges, what have you. And so this would repeal all of those punishments and incentivize work. It would incentivize, if a person does work, they will receive credits. Now, this a ballot measure came up several years ago that was like Proposition 6, that also would have required the state to pay individuals who work minimum wage. It would have required the state to pay individuals who are incarcerated a living wage in order to allow them to create a sustainable savings so that when they get out, they were then able to land on their feet. Now, ostensibly, it also would have been taken away in order to pay back restitution and fines, which we weren't too happy about. But because the state would have had to pay those wages, many people saw that as a financial burden on the taxpayers, and so the ballot measure failed. This has removed all of the monetary side of this. It costs nothing in order to do this. Okay, it costs relatively few dollars, if any at all, in order for this proposition to enact this proposition. So 34 states in the country have earned time credits that are awarded for participating in or completing education, vocational training, treatment, and work programs. Now, we know that the state of California has recently implemented certain credits for programming. This would also incentivize work. Where do we sit as a state within the country, right? So in 2022, voters in 5 states decided on ballot measures like these. So Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont. All but Louisiana voted yes to repeal that language. Nebraska voted to remove, and Utah in 2020 removed that language from their constitutions, and California and Colorado also did in 2018. So this is not a new thing. It's on par with kind of the progressive way in which people are now orienting to certain parts of incarceration. And we in California have a responsibility to each other and to our incarcerated family members and community, and formerly incarcerated family members and community, to get this done. So I think that's pretty plain. I don't think it takes a lot of explanation. So instead, what I'd like to do is tell you what you can do. So here's what you can do. There are organizations in your local community, including Vera and others, which I will provide, that you can do phone banking for. You can reach out to your legislators to make sure that they are out and they are making their voices heard, that you can make sure that your local city councils are also doing so, and you can educate your neighbors, your friends, your families, and yourselves. Find opportunities to get the word out now. We are very few days, I think we're 30 days, 29 days from the election right now, even less. And taking this language out of the Constitution will change things fundamentally in our state. It will reduce harm. Goodbye, John. Love you too. It will reduce so much harm within the state to our incarcerated family members and community members. So as of right now, there are no campaigns in opposition to this. As far as we can see, nobody is coming out saying that they don't want this. However, there are some right-wing Republican groups that are doing some ground movement to try to restrict the reach of communication on Prop 6. And so that is why you doing the work in your community is so, 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 so important. Yeah, so that's Prop 6. It's very straightforward. It's a yes vote. That is what we are looking for. It is a yes vote on Proposition 6. And there are resources within the chat that you can utilize in order to help make that happen. Okay. What time is it? 6:56. We can, I think what I'd like to do is open it up now for questions on Prop 6, because I know that there will likely be more questions about Proposition 36. Oh, real quick before I do that, I just want to acknowledge right now that the state constitution mirrors many other state constitutions and the federal constitution. And the reason it does is because of white supremacy. Like, we need to acknowledge this. This is a white supremacist foundational structural way of that the system exists. And in repealing this, we, at least in one way, are combating white supremacy in the very fundamental document that we live under in our state, and that our family members are living under in our state. So if you're committed to anti-racist work in your communities, it's a great way to get out and actually do that active work. So, questions about Prop 6? Okay. Young, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. You're muted, huh? No? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the big bill.
One quick.
Oh,
These are all in California, right? Or are they?
say that again?
These are all in California?
Yeah, these are specific to California.
Okay.
These bills. Yeah, these propositions. These are specific to California. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so the next one is the big one. There's going to be a lot of information coming at you. There's resources in the chat, and we'll have time for questions. But I'm going to give this its due diligence. So there's going to be a lot of language and a lot of information. If at any point you don't understand something, just make a note of it. We'll talk about it during Q&A. So, Proposition 36. So, in short, Proposition 36 proposes extending harsh three-strike style sentencing to low-level nonviolent drug and theft offenses. So what this does is it repeals or replaces or turns back a lot of the positive work that was done through Prop 47 back in 2014, which took out of the felony category low-level drug offenses, including possession and use of substances, as well as retail theft crime, shoplifting. Okay. Now, California already has the harshest retail theft laws in the country, some of the harshest ones. The penalties are already some of the highest. Proposition 36 would actually make that worse, and I'll get to that in a minute. So it would cost California taxpayers billions each year and strip funding from critical crime prevention programs that keep communities safe and healthy, like mental health and drug treatment, housing services, K through 12 school programs. It's taking money out of those buckets and putting it directly into the hands of CDCR and the carceral system. So what is Prop 36? So in the early 10s, right? I think we called them the aughts. There was a critical analysis of the prison system, and it was found to be overfilled, dangerous, ineffective, and harmful, right? And it was untenably expensive. It was so expensive to taxpayers. And it was so dire that the United States Supreme Court ordered that action be taken, right? They ordered that an overseer look at the prison system and manage it going forward. So in order to comply with the U.S. Constitution, save money and improve the prison system, which I'm not so worried about improving it as I am in dismantling it, but that's a different conversation. Californians passed Proposition 47 with an overwhelming majority of the vote. And what Prop 47 did was it reclassified 6 minor felony offenses to misdemeanors, including shoplifting and simple drug possession. And what that did was it actually reduced the overall prison population because the pipeline had been cut off for those low-level offenses. And so what it did was it took those cost savings, right? Because we know that it costs about 190,000. Oh boy. It costs over $100,000 a year to incarcerate a single individual, $110,000 a year to incarcerate a single individual in the state of California a year. 90% of that cost goes into managing and maintaining the prison itself and to staff salaries, not into programming. And so the cost savings of the beds that would have been filled were then funneled into measures like drug and mental health treatment, homelessness prevention and housing creation, victim services centers, into positive programming that we know had a positive effect. We have the research to show that Prop 47 worked. They aligned with research concluding that addressing these offenses with jail or prison time is both expensive and ineffective. We know that it doesn't work to jail individuals who are living in poverty on the margins, dealing with addiction, drug use, what have you. Jailing them does not solve the problem. It simply warehouses individuals away from communities, which creates more harm and is much more detrimental to our communities. So there was a previous effort to recall all of Prop 47, but it received less than 40% of the vote. And now here comes Prop 36, which shifted. So Prop 36 doesn't try to repeal all of Prop 47. It takes critical points out of Prop 47 while adding language that makes people think it's going to be good for everyone. So a decade of research has concluded that Prop 47 accomplished its goals. It absolutely has. The studies have concluded that it reduced overall recriminalization and arrest of individuals. It did not, it saved the state more than $800 million, and that money was funneled into programming that we critically need and still need in a budget deficit, and reduced both the prison population and racial disparities in arrest categories. It actually reduced overall racial disparities across all of those categories, and it reduced racial disparities within the areas that money was funneled to. So homelessness services, addiction services, mental health services. It actually reduced overall racial disparities because funds were being utilized appropriately and being funneled into the appropriate hands. And it also made the state safer. We actually found that crime did not go up. It has not gone up in that time. The historical arc of the of crime data shows that in fact it hasn't. The media would like you to believe something else, but that is simply the truth. And we critically need. Oh, hi Phoebe, I'm going to let you in. And we critically need these programs. And Prop 36 would actually take money back out of those programs and put it back into the carceral and police state. So over the last year and during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of news. Excuse me, my dog is being very annoying. Give me 1 second. Go. So during the pandemic, we saw a lot of news about retail crime, retail theft, and drug use, right? We saw, what happened in Oregon with the decriminalization of substance use and how the media took that. And we saw it here in California, especially with San Francisco and Oakland, how much sensationalization has been made about this. I can tell you as a person who lives here in the Bay, yes, substance use is hard for people and it is pervasive. However, pause for effect, is not what the media would tell you. It's simply not. And to repeal these programs would be a horrible idea. So this year, big corporations, including Target, Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Home Depot, big box stores, and the prison lobby and right-wing interests are funding Prop 36. This is where the money is coming from. A ballot proposition that once again seeks to roll back Prop 47. Although they describe Prop 36 as, so this is how they label Prop 36. This is the title of it. The Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. That's the language they use to sell this to the masses. None of its provisions directly address any of those things. And it seeks to address substance use and petty theft through longer sentences and enhanced punishments that we know from the evidence only worsen those issues. If you take a person out of community and put them in prison, they are far more likely to then come out of prison and be houseless. And because they are houseless, they are far more likely to then be rearrested. 10 times more likely to be homeless coming out of incarceration, 11 times more likely to be reincarcerated if they are houseless. So it exacerbates the situation exponentially. So what would it do? What would Prop 36 actually do in our communities? It would return California to its worst days of ineffective and expensive mass incarceration. So it would bloat the prison population. So quick data, just to let you know, over the last couple of decades, we have reduced California's overall prison population by almost 20%. So almost 20% of the prison population has gone down. We have thousands of empty beds right now in the state of California. And that's good. We want the prison system to go down. 3 prisons were closed in 2024. However, in closing them, they put them on pause. They did not fully close them, and Prop 36 seeks to refill them. So what would it do? It would strip approximately $100 million annually in funding for drug treatment, housing, and school-based programs, what we actually need to prevent these things in the first place, as well as services for survivors of crime. So people who are survivors of violent crime, this would actually take money out of programs that are serving them. Because more Californians would languish in jail and prison on low-level offenses because it increases the penalties, it would actually cost California taxpayers an additional $5 billion per year. Now we are in a I think it's 24 or $22 billion budget deficit at the moment. And I think it's ballooning up to $50 billion. This would increase that by another $5 billion on top of the $27 billion we spend annually on jails, prisons, and courts across the state. So it balloons that up to $36 billion. And it just makes us less safe. It actually reduces overall safety in our communities. And it would reverse the state's gain in reducing dangerous, racially inequitable and unequal and unconstitutional crowded prison populations. There was a 28% drop in overall racial disparities within the carceral system since 2014 when Prop 47 was put in place. It actually reduced the racial disparity in incarceration and policing and arrest. So here's what it would do to a person. These are the penalties. So if someone gets caught possessing this is for possession and use, a small amount of drugs, 3 or more times, they could go to jail or prison for up to 3 years. That's correct, but it also doesn't show the full scale. First time offense, it's 16 months. You go away to jail. Second time, it's 22. Third time, it's 36. Now, what they'll tell you is that, oh, but we allow them to seek treatment. If they fit certain criteria, we will defer them into treatment. What they don't tell you is that treatment is actually incarceration, and we don't have any beds in treatment facilities because we haven't built the infrastructure for individuals who would be going through the system. So they would languish in jail until a bed came up for them to go into if they decided to do treatment, because it specifically states that it would require in-person, in-facility treatment programming. If someone gets arrested for low-level theft 3 or more times, they could go to jail or prison for up to 3 years. Now, this includes something as simple as returning a rental car late or stealing a sandwich. 16 months, 22 months, 36 months. First, second, third. Here's the other side of this. It puts those offenses back in the felony category and makes them eligible for 3 strikes. So if you come out of prison on a felony, you come out and you're houseless and you're starving and you steal a sandwich, they can put you in jail for 16 months. That's a second felony. You come back out, you don't have anything, You go and you steal another thing, or you start using to be able to stay awake on the street because you're afraid you're going to get assaulted. You can be put in prison for 25 years to life. It expands the three strikes. Okay. So how do they determine whether or not a person can do treatment? It allows someone to, it says allows judges to sentence someone to a felony. It really recategorizes these as felonies. Judges don't have as much autonomy as this makes it seem. For possessing any amount of drugs, if the person has previously been convicted of 2 or more drug-related offenses, including misdemeanor possession. So that's kind of the language they put under. But there are some areas in there that actually allow them to do it for first-time drug offense. If a judge determines the person is eligible for suitable treatment or suitable treatment that can participate in court-mandated addiction and mental health treatment instead of incarceration, however, the choice is more or less made for them by the judge. They don't get to choose whether or not they do the treatment. The judge gets to find them suitable. So if the judge doesn't find them suitable, they're going to jail. It's not going to actually address the underlying needs of an individual who is put before the court. So it adds fentanyl to the list of drugs for which it is a felony to possess any amount, while also possessing a loaded firearm. That's neither here nor there. The point of this being that what it will do is it will expand expand penalties under 3 strikes, expand penalties for low-level offenses, balloon our already overstressed and harmful carceral system, and it will put determinative factors for a person's well-being, including mental health, back in the hands of prosecutors, judges, and police. It will cost the state of California taxpayers $5 billion more per year. What it will actually do, it actually, the estimates coming out of some nonpartisan budgetary think tanks is that it will actually cost California about $47 billion per year. So that is Prop 36. That is what we are currently up against. And just for context's sake, we're losing. Those who want Proposition 36 to go through raised about $12.1 million, and they've spent it all. They've got politicians, they've got box store CEOs, they've got city councils in their pocket, and they are running them out in front of everybody, including Mayor of San Jose, to say how great the Prop 36 is going to be. On our side, we've raised about $1.4 million and we've spent it. That's all that's it. And so the only way this has a chance is if you get out and do your job. What is required of you here is to get your voice out, collectively get your community together. Especially, and I'm just going to say this, especially if you are a person of affluence or privilege, you need to be speaking up. This is your job to do this, because communities that are marginalized don't have the same voice and don't have the same power. So it's on us to get out there and do the work. So we got about 15 minutes left. I want to go ahead and stop here. There's so much more information I could be giving you about Prop 36. I could go on for hours about it, but I want to just, I just want to go ahead and settle back down here and allow for space for questions and comments
Yes.
from everybody here. Yeah, Jamie.